Thingkho Le Malcha by KSO Media and Documentation Cell. Issue number 67. Friday, 17 November 2023. Headlines. 23 proscribed Meitei militant intruders or infiltrators transported to Impol. Kuki Inpi Chundel condemns Meitei AR officer's action, demands removal from Kukizo area. Hoikim. Violence erupted on May 3rd, engineered, pre-planned by Chin Kuki narco-terrorists, spearheaded by IDLF, KOTU. 10 political parties show discontent towards state government, demands PM Modi to intervene. Police case against Kukizo group leader over self-government ultimatum. Arms, ammo seized from suspected Aram by Tengalgun. Meiteis of Lamka to hand over land documents to Sasindro. By 8, distinct tribe in the offing in Assam, any live false report busted. Targeting of Kukis the main reason behind Manipur violence. Thingkho Le Malcha. Relief Center update. Chinkanpang Waimei Relief Center. Chinkanpang, Lamka. Managed by Young Mizo Association, Waimei Chinkan Branch. Total inmates registered, 112. Male, 57. Female, 64. Kuki Victims Update AS on November 10, 2023. Deaths, 150. Villages burnt, 200 plus. Houses burnt, 7,000 plus. Churches and synagogues burnt, 360. Displaced persons, 41,425. 23 proscribed Meitei militant intruders or infiltrators transported to Impol. Kuki Inpi Chundel condemns Meitei AR officer's action, demands removal from Kukizo area. The much predictable fallout of appointing a Meitei army officer as in charge of an Assam Rifles unit in predominantly Kukizo area of Chundel district is starting to take a toll on the cordial relations between the public and the AR. Besides posing serious threat to the national security, the Kuki Inpi Chundel has said on Friday, today, about 23 cadres of valley-based insurgent groups, BIGs, who intruded into the Indian territory from their bases in Myanmar, have been transported towards Impol Valley from Chundel district with the tacit support of Kal SB Sharma of One Assam Rifles, Salin. The apprehension that the posting of a Meitei AR officer in Kukizo-dominated area would jeopardize the peaceful atmosphere is becoming a reality. The central government shall be held solely responsible for any consequences arising thereof, KIC said in a press condemnation. It is very unfortunate that despite the repeated appeals to the concerned authority by the Kuki Inpi, Chundel, Kuki Inpi Manipur and Kuki chiefs not to appoint an officer belonging to the Meitei community in Salin/Kangjoy area as the situation in the state is still volatile and can exacerbate at the slightest misstep, the authority concerned ignored the pleas. It said. It is a well-known fact that many BIGs are operating together with military junta of neighboring Myanmar. These anti-national elements have carried out subversive, secessionist, terrorist and violent activities on Indian soil and have taken refuge at their bases in Myanmar. On November 8, many BIGs, who were proscribed under India's UPA law, entered into Indian soil, Chundel district, after they fled their bases in Myanmar consequent upon the offensive launched against the military by anti-junta forces. These BIGs are reportedly staying at Myanmar military's camps. An Indian Aadhaar card in the name of a Meitei man was found at a Myanmar military camp after being overrun by anti-junta force in Myanmar just a day earlier. Chundel District's Kuki apex body alleged that the militant cadres are also known for adding more firepower to the Meitei side in the ongoing state-sponsored ethnic cleansing campaign against the Kukizo people in Manipur. Although these BIGs are declared unlawful organizations, one Meitei army officer is providing logistics to transport the proscribed insurgents to Impol Valley. This act of the said Meitei officer is posing great threats to the security of India, particularly loyal Indian citizens of Chundel district, it said. Vehemently condemning the act of the Meitei AR officer who extended logistical to the banned BIGs. The Kuki Inpi Chundel therefore urged the authority concerned to initiate action against this particular Meitei officer and remove him from Chundel district Salin area or any other Kukizo-dominated area for the sake of peace and national security. Kuki Inpi Chundel warned that it would not remain a mute spectator if the demands are not met immediately. Hoikim. Violence erupted on May 3rd, engineered, pre-planned by Chin Kuki narco-terrorists, spearheaded by IDLF, KOTU. The Coordinating Committee on Manipur Integrity, Hoikim, a valley-based civil outfit, has claimed that the violence that erupted in Manipur on May 3rd was engineered and pre-planned by Chin Kuki narco-terrorists and spearheaded by the Indigenous Tribal Leaders Forum, ITLF, and Committee on Tribal Unity, KOTU. In a statement issued on Friday, the Meitei coordinating body stated that the Kuki-Chin narco-terrorists' long-nurtured dream of achieving a separate administration, independent state, or country had been shaping up in a phase-wise manner by earning huge profits from poppy cultivation, extortion on highways, looting and tax collection, etc., Kokomi said. Their call for establishment of self-government/separate administration in Kuki-dominated areas of Manipur will only worsen the prevailing volatile situation, thereby upsetting the peaceful coexistence of the Kuki people themselves and would hinder further settlement of Kukis in Manipur, while also claiming that the governments at the center and state are aware of the illegal immigrants who are allegedly responsible for the violence in Manipur. Recently, the External Affairs Minister, Jagshankar, had also stated in New York that a large influx of immigrants led to the present crisis in Manipur state. It stated Kokomi demanded that the center and state governments should take up befitting action against those people or organizations who have been demanding separate administration or self-government. It also said that the responsibilities of the turmoil and ethnic violence in Manipur should also be borne by the indigenous tribal leaders Foreign and Committee on Tribal Unity. TLM views. The devastation in Manipur violence is purely a handiwork of insane Métis and their frontal radicalized organizations, including the so-called Coordinating Committee on Manipur Integrity, Kokomi, Arambai Tangle, Mayday Lipan, Kanglipak Kambalup, World Mayday Council, and others to fulfill their present political agenda. Kokomi is responsible for escalating the tension by declaring war against the Kukis, now growing up to its peak beyond repair. The bloodbath arising out of the ethnic cleansing pogrom unleashed on the Kukis by Kokomi in complicity with the state machineries along with private militia groups of Arambai Tangle and Mayday Lipan compelled the demand for separate administration. The Kokomi with their lunatic followers must acknowledge themselves that they are the real threat to national security, who wage war against India for sovereignty. The Kokomi should also acknowledge that the real narco-terrorists are the Mayday terrorists based in Myanmar, vividly sponsored by the state leadership and Mayday cabinet ministers, MLAs and civil organizations including Kokomi itself. The pre-planned ethnic cleansing against the Kukis by the Métis is evident from the radical Mayday civil militias who operate based on systematic and sinister planning. 10 political parties show discontent towards state government, demands PM Modi to intervene. Frustrated with the state government for its inability to resolve the ongoing conflict, 10 like-minded political parties once again met with the governor of Manipur Anusiya Yuki. This time the main agenda of the meeting with the governor was to request her to initiate a meeting of all political parties in Manipur with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The purpose of the meeting was to find a solution to the present conflict in the state. Addressing the media after their interaction with the governor at Congress Bhawan late evening, the leader of the Congress Legislature Party, Okrama Bobi Singh, said that the present crisis is about to complete 7 months. However, the state government is not taking any proactive steps to resolve the crisis and bring understanding between the warring communities. We are really frustrated to see the irresponsible act of state government. We are so helpless and have no option left to find out solution. Therefore, we once again meet with the constitutional head of state, governor today, said Abobi, who is also the former chief minister of Manipur. He informed that they had submitted a memorandum to the governor urging her to arrange a meeting of all political parties in Manipur with Prime Minister Narendra Modi to chart out a plan for resolving the present conflict, in the best interest of all people of Manipur. He also said that if Narendra Modi is too busy visiting the strife-torn state of Manipur, at least he can convene a meeting in Delhi. All the representatives of 10 like-minded political parties would be very grateful if PM invited us for a meeting at Delhi, he suggested, and further said that if the state government is incapable of bringing an amicable solution, they should take help from the central government. It may be mentioned that after the onslaught of the crisis, 10 like-minded opposition parties had joined together, spearheaded by the Congress Party, to fight the present crisis and bring an amicable solution. The parties are Indian National Congress, Janata Dal, United, Communist Party of India, Marxist, Communist Party of India, Nationalist Congress Party, Shiva Sena, UBT, All India Forward Bloc, AAM Admi Party, All India Trinamool Congress, Revolutionary Socialist Party. Police case against Kuki group leader over self-government ultimatum. A police case has been filed against the general secretary of a Kuki group in ethnic violence hit Manipur over his comments they will start a self-government whether the center recognizes it or not. Nguyen Tuming, the general secretary of the Indigenous Tribal Leaders Forum, ITLF, faces several serious charges under the Indian Penal Code, IPC, including sedition and conspiring to wage war against the Indian government. During a protest in Manipur's Hill District Churachandpur on Wednesday, Mr. Tuming had challenged the central government that they are ready to establish a self-governed separate administration in areas dominated by them, whether the center recognizes it or not, if their demand for a separate administration is not met within a couple of weeks. It has been over 6 months and nothing has been done regarding our demand for a separate administration from the Manipur government. So if our voice is not heard within a couple of weeks, we will set up our self-government. Irrespective of whether the center recognizes it or not, we will go ahead, Mr. Tuming told reporters amid the protest in Churachandpur. As in a state or a union territory, we will set up a self-government that will look into all matters in the Kuki-zo areas. We have to do this since our voice has not been heard, Mr. Tuming said. The Manipur police have filed an FR against the Indigenous Tribal Leaders Forum, ITLF, General Secretary at the Churachandpur police station. As per the FIR, Magun Tuming, General Secretary of the ITLF, has been accused of conspiring for waging or attempting to wage war or abetting waging of war against the government of India, further punishment for sedition, wantonly giving provocation with intent to cause riot if toiting be committed if not committed. The FIR has been filed by Thingkho Le Malcha, Inspector, Office in Charge, Churachandpur Police Station under Section 121, A/124, A/153/120, B of IPC. Meanwhile, the case will be investigated by SIB Ziramthang of Churachandpur Police Station. Arms, ammo seized from suspected Aram by Thingkho. A substantial number of arms and ammunition were seized during a search operation carried out by security forces in and around peripheral areas of Moidangpak Mining Line Lock, Impole West under Patsoi Police Station this afternoon. During the search operation, 1 AK-56 with 1 magazine, 1 pistol with magazine, 2 hand grenades with detonator, 50 rounds of 7.62 mm live ammunition. For numbers of country-made GI pipe pumpy guns with explosives, 100 numbers of 12-bore shotgun cartridges and 12 numbers of live ammunition marked as EC4 were seized. The search operation was carried out by a combined team of 5 9th GR, police teams from Patsoi Police Station, Sangathel Outpost, and Impole West Commandos stationed at New Keithalmambi. Metes of Lamka to hand over land documents to Sasindro. The Metes living at Lamka and who have since fled from there have decided to hand over their land documents to CAF and PD Minister Lysantham Sasindro Mite if the latter doesn't clarify the controversial statement he gave on November 8. The minister had made an unfounded claim that Metes living at Churachandpur were found not possessing any land document. Addressing the media at Manipur Press Club today, Churachandpur Mite Ethnic Clash Victims Committee General Secretary Naba Ningthajam said that the statement of the minister has upset the Metes of Lamka to a great extent, and as such he needs to clarify. It is unfortunate that such senseless remarks came from a person in a respectable position amid the difficult situation in Manipur, he said, and added that they will hand over their land documents to the minister if he doesn't clarify. There are about 1,000 Mite land pata holders at Lamka while about 15,000 Metes got displaced from the district, Naba said. He also said that the government is planning to provide 10 rupees lakh for building pucca houses, 7 rupees lakh for semi-pucca and 5 rupees lakh for kacha houses to the victims of ethnic violence who lost their houses is unacceptable. While asking the government to provide proper compensation to the victims of the ethnic clash, he argued that it is the failure of the government to take up security measures which allowed the Kukis to raze down several Mite houses. By 8, distinct tribe in the offing in Assam, any live false report busted. The Assam government under the leadership of Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma has decided to send a proposal for inclusion of Baiate as a distinct tribe to the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, Government of India. The decision was adopted in a cabinet meeting held on Thursday, November 16. The cabinet proposal sought the inclusion of Baiate as a distinct entry, while simultaneously advocating for the exclusion of Baiate, Beat, from the existing list under 7. Any Kuki tribes including as specified in Entry 7 of Part 2 Assamai and the autonomous districts of Karbai Along and North Kutcher Hills in the schedule to the Constitution, St. Order, 1950, as amended. Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma also announced the approval of the creation of the Kasi Jainsha Development Council, aimed at addressing the specific needs and concerns of the Kasi and Jainsha communities. The move is expected to enhance community representation and foster development tailored to the unique requirements of these groups. However, the Northeast Live News channel wrongly reported that the Assam cabinet had a proposal to grant tribal status to Kuki and Meitei in Assam. It is to be noted here that Kuki had been already a recognized tribe in Assam in the form of any Kuki tribes, including various subtribes/clans since 1950 as amended in the Indian Constitution. The Assam cabinet also did not mention anything about the Meitei issue. It is to be noted that a responsible news channel should not indulge in spreading such false news. Targeting of Kukis the main reason behind Manipur violence. Since early May, when an intense wave of violence and ethnic strife convulsed Manipur, everyone has said practically everything about the northeastern state. There is a frenzied rush to identify the immediate triggers of the violence. but few have spent time discussing its broader context. There is a mistaken belief among large sections of the mainstream policy and media community outside Manipur that this is a petty brawl between two ethnic groups in the remote northeast that can be resolved only if both sides make some concessions. This liberal imagination ignores the gross imbalance of social and political power between the Meitei and Kuki, specifically, how the former enjoys greater agency in decision-making and discourse-setting processes over the latter. The dominant media outside Manipur has also failed to sustain the focus on how the Biren Singh government and Meitei civil society deployed problematic tropes to other the Kukis who have lived in Manipur for many centuries. It has also avoided an honest discussion on how the government dismissed serious Kuki grievances for years, allowing their discontent to reach boiling point. Instead, the media continues to obsess over guns and drugs, as if all of Manipur's problems would disappear if one removes these two from the equation. Sure, a lot of what is going on in Manipur is to do with M16 assault rifles and poppy. Two phrases currently in circulation amongst conflict intellectuals are sophisticated weapons and narco-terrorists. But these are just the outer shells of a conflict whose roots lie elsewhere. Thus, there is a need to rencontre the debate on Manipur. We can start doing that by placing the events leading up to the current wave of violence in the right context. No effort at dialogue. There is a certain view amongst mainstream commentators that the Manipur violence was triggered by a single event, the Manipur High Court's April 19 order to grant Scheduled Tribe (ST) status to the majority Meitei community. That is not entirely the case. In the months leading up to the order, a series of brash policy decisions and divisive political iterations had already soured the atmosphere and frayed the delicate social contract of Manipur. On March 10, the Kuki civil society, led by the Indigenous Tribal Leaders Forum, ITLF, organized a peaceful rally in several hill districts, including Churachandpur, Tingkho, Kangpokpi, Ukral, and Jiribam. It was a statewide, nonviolent agitation against the Biren Singh government's policy of arbitrarily evicting Kuki villages under the garb of expanding reserved forests, a move that many community voices argued was in violation of the Indian Forest Act, 1927, and Forest Rights Act, 2006. They were particularly protesting the forced eviction of some 16 Kuki families from the tiny village of Songyang, located in Churachandpur district, on February 20th. One such rally in Kangpokpi turned violent when the local police used force on the protesters, reportedly injuring 20. Over the last few years, the Biren Singh government has pushed Manipur's delicate ethnopolitical consensus closer to the cliff edge by steamrolling policy initiatives without wider consultations to create an insider-outsider divide. But, instead of inviting the protesters for a dialogue and making a proactive effort to de-escalate tensions, like any impartial government should do in such cases, the Biren Singh administration dialed up the heat. First, it imposed prohibitory orders under Section 144 of the Code of Criminal Procedure in the Hill districts. Then, in the late hours of March 10, it withdrew from the suspension of Operations Sioux agreement with two Kuki armed groups, the Kuki National Army (KNA) and Zomi Revolutionary Army (ZRA). To a lay observer, it might have seemed like the state government was conflating two different issues, but it was a deliberate move designed to discredit the protests. By revoking the Sioux Pact, the Singh government did two things at once. It walked out of the tripartite peace process between Impul, New Delhi, and the Kuki armed groups. And it told the people of Manipur that the Kuki protests were directly linked to militant groups. This was an absurd and precipitous response to what was essentially a civil society rally. The chief minister even went to a news channel from the northeast and blamed illegal immigrants from Myanmar, who are doing poppy plantations and drug business for the protests. He linked the rallies to the KNA and ZRA, making sure to highlight that the ZRA was led by an ex-MP from Myanmar and the KNA by a Haokip from Nagaland. Haokip is a common Kuki clan name, drumming up fear. Impul's message was clear. Although wholly unsubstantiated and deeply troubling, the unrest in the hills was remote-controlled from beyond Manipur's and even India's borders. This despite the Kuki leaders who organized the March 10 rallies, such as the IDLF secretary, Nguyen Tuming, publicly distancing themselves from political parties and armed groups. They insisted that theirs was a purely civil society-led movement meant to vocalize the genuine and organic discontents amongst Manipuri Kukis. In fact, one day after Chief Minister Singh gave his provocative interview, Seelan Haokip, spokesperson for the Kuki National Organization, KNO, a coalition group of 17 Kuki Sioux groups, went to the same channel and confessed that the IDLF had asked his group to stay away from the protests. Both communities, the Meiteis and the Kukis, are now bound together by a shared sense of existential insecurity. This, in turn, is creating endless cycles of violence today. For anyone closely following the recent pathologies of Manipuri politics, the Impol government's dismissal of Kuki grievances by using the fig leaves of militancy, illegal immigration, and poppy cultivation would certainly not have come as a surprise. Over the last few years, especially since it returned to power in 2022, the Biren Singh government has pushed Manipur's delicate ethnopolitical consensus closer to the cliff edge by steamrolling policy initiatives without wider consultations and deploying a bewildering mishmash of issues to create an insider-outsider divide. First, the Biren Singh government has liberally used the influx of Chin Kuki asylum seekers fleeing brutal attacks by the junta in Myanmar, which attempted to snatch power from an elected government in February 2021 through a coup d'état, to reanimate Meitei nationalism and give it an antagonistic edge. It did so by using a classic ethno-majoritarian tactic, amplifying a pre-existing fear psychosis amongst the Meiteis that they would soon be overrun by Kuki illegals from Myanmar. Driving a wedge. The chief minister, who should have been a force for inter-ethnic unity and fraternity in fragile times, has himself used pejoratives to drive a wedge between the two communities. For instance, in April, he told the RSS mouthpiece, organizer, that foreigner Kuki immigrants have taken control of the social, political, and economic affairs of the native tribal people of the state, which has reduced the indigenous people of the state to second-class citizens, an assertion that has little to no quantitative or qualitative basis. In fact, he had himself asserted at a media conclave just 5 years ago that there were no illegal infiltrators in Manipur. But it is not just about stray verbal iterations. The Singh government has also exuded a sense of action to bolster its politics of indigeneity. Responding to the demands of Meitei civil society, it has expressed willingness to introduce an Assam-like National Register of Citizens, NRC, to sieve out illegal immigrants from Manipur's population. Much like how the Assam NRC disproportionately victimized Bengal-origin Muslims by questioning their Indian-ness, a similar exercise in Manipur would likely put the Kukis, many of whom have intergenerational links with Myanmar and do not possess formal documentation, like birth certificates and land ownership deeds, on the short end. As Sangmuin Hangzing and Tanavalt highlighted in a recent piece for East Mojo, the state government, earlier this year, launched verification drives in the Kuki-dominated hill districts to identify illegal immigrants from Myanmar by collecting individuals' biometric details. This, they argue, unjustly infringed upon the privacy of Kuki families. Notably, these verification drives were undertaken without any proper legal mandate. The NRC in Assam, notwithstanding its segregationist design, was sanctioned by the Supreme Court. Singh has also indicated that his government would start conducting house-to-house surveys to identify illegal immigrants. It has already detained at least 100 asylum seekers from Myanmar since January from the hill districts bordering Myanmar, such as Churachandpur and Thingkho. Even as all of this was going on, in February, Singh announced that his government would set up 34 new police posts along the India-Myanmar border to check cross-border infiltration. Meanwhile, the central government, with Impul's cooperation, has been erecting barbed wire fences along the border. Highlights. The Biren Singh government dismissed serious Kuki grievances for years, allowing their discontent to reach boiling point. Over the years, the Biren Singh government has liberally used the influx of Chin Kuki asylum seekers fleeing Myanmar to reanimate Meitei nationalism and give it an antagonistic edge. By flattening Kuki villages in the name of environmental protection, instead of working with the community, the Impol government projected the tribal community as one that is not interested in saving the environment. Soft border. In effect, the Singh government has attempted to harden a border that was always fundamentally soft in character. It is this softness of the India-Myanmar border running along a 1,640-kilometer multi-ethnic stretch of India's northeasternmost edges that makes it more than a drab political boundary. It is a living thing that breathes life into an otherwise hostile and remote administrative frontier. The reality of various ethnic communities moving across this border for both mundane and extraordinary reasons is a historical truism that no local or central government has ever been able to permanently mediate. Singh, as a Manipuri Meitei, likely knows this well, but is willing to militarize and exceptionalize the border areas for ethnopolitical ends. Ultimately, none of Singh's executive decisions may sustain as envisioned, but few can deny they have done enough to foment a sense of demographic alarmism and existential precariousness amongst the Meiteis. Many of them now believe that their homeland is under some kind of external aggression, to borrow a phrase used by state institutions and ethno-nationalist civil society in Assam with troubling frequency. Ironically, this securitized state of exception has come at the cost of the Kukis' sense of security and belongingness in a state that they too consider home. This has produced an odd, somewhat paradoxical, outcome. Both communities, the Meiteis and the Kukis, are now bound together by a shared sense of existential insecurity. This, in turn, is creating endless cycles of violence today. Second, by by using land surveys to expand the limits of reserve forests across the hills, arbitrarily bulldozing Kuki settlements, and displacing villagers without proper compensation or rehabilitation. The Manipur government has created a feeling of rootlessness and alienation in the collective Kuki psyche. The community's leaders argue that many of the evicted villages have existed for more than half a century and see the government's expansion into their ancestral land as encroachment. The government counter-argues that it is the Kuki who is encroaching on protected forest land. They are encroaching everywhere, said the chief minister in an emphatic telephonic interview with veteran Assamese journalist Wasbir Hussain on March 10th as Kukis took to the streets. In hindsight, this follows linearly from what Singh said 2 years ago in Kangpapi district's Mangjol village. Ironically, during a Van Mahotsav, or forest festival, all lands belong to the state. False portrayal. Binary disagreements aside, the mood issue here is of consultation, or lack thereof, with stakeholders. The reserved forest issue would have probably been resolved amicably if the state government had discussed it with the Kuki community and civil society leaders, to make them feel they are an active part of the policy-making process. Those like the Kuki Students' Organization KSO have been peacefully voicing their grievances over the reserve forest expansion, such as in the case of the Churachandpur Protected Forest, since 2022. But the state government did not invite them for formal consultations. Environmental protection must go hand in hand with the protection of vulnerable communities who are most affected by environmental degradation, the Kukis, in this case. Community consultations become even more crucial when land that a modern state wants to regularize is governed by long-standing customary laws and norms of village settlement. By flattening Kuki villages instead of working with the community, the Impol government ended up projecting the tribal community as one that is not interested in environmental protection and only understands the language of force. This is hardly the case. All that the Kuki civil society had been demanding, as reflected in a KSO memorandum from November 2022, was for the state government to conduct proper inquiries into the extent of the state's rights over forest land by virtue of the Indian Forest Act, 1927, before taking any brash action, like evictions. That never happened. The state government, by sidelining the very community that has been living on forest land for decades, if not centuries, only widened the mental distance between the Impol Valley and the Kuki inhabited hills. By repeatedly disparaging the Kukis as encroachers and outsiders, further, it validated the belief that a new geographical imagination of Manipur, which has no place for the Kukis, was in the works. This is the same government that had promoted initiatives such as the Go to Hills campaign some years ago to bridge the Hill-Valley divide. The perceived loss of political agency amongst the hill-inhabiting Kukis is not new. In fact, it is not even limited to the Kukis. In 2021, the Hill Areas Committee, HAC, a body of 18 Naga, Kuki, and other tribal legislators from the hill districts of Manipur, proposed what was known as the Autonomous District Councils, ADC. Amendment Bill 2021. The proposed law was meant to give the HAC more autonomy in economic and administrative affairs. However, the Singh government continued to stall it and ultimately introduced 2 alternatives that, according to the Hill tribal leaders, diluted the original bill. Agitations and blockades followed, but no logical conclusion was reached. Pending issues such as these have contributed immensely to widening the Hill-Valley divide, driving the Kukis out of Impol's orbit, and finally, creating conditions for violent unrest. They are more central to understanding the current violence than guns and drugs. Way ahead. Contrary to what many believe, reconciliation is different from peacemaking. The former demands a genuine collective desire to put things behind and move on in a way that is just and acceptable to all. The latter is often an interim absence of violence without equitable guarantees and a sense of justice. We might soon see peace return to Manipur, but reconciliation will take time. What Manipur is going through today is no ordinary instance of mass violence. It has, as Arunabh Saikia recently observed in an online article after a reporting trip to Manipur, partitioned the state in arguably unprecedented ways. Indeed, Manipur seems to be undergoing a kind of turbulent transformation, a radical remapping of its political geography that will take years, if not decades, to undo. To move forward, a strife-torn society first needs to look back briefly. For genuine reconciliation to happen, there needs to be an honest recognition of some facts. 1. This was never an equal clash between 2 equal sides. 2. The Kuki community was consistently ignored, otherist, and berated by the state government and Impol-based civil society over angular issues like drugs, illegal immigration, and encroachment. And 3. The state government abjectly failed to protect vulnerable sections of the population in Manipur from majoritarian violence. If mainstream society and the state and the government recognize these facts of their own volition, durable peace may come to Manipur sooner than expected. If they do not, Manipur, which was once presented as India's gateway to Myanmar and Southeast Asia, could be in pain for a long time. First published by Frontline. Ankushman Chowdhury is Associate Fellow, Center for Policy Research, New Delhi.